Thank you for listening to the Luminous Recovery Yoga Podcast, hosted by Kari. The views and opinions expressed here are strictly those of the person who gave them. Take what you like and leave the rest. These views and opinions do not represent any specific 12-step program, only my experience, strength, and hope in recovering from the dis-ease of addiction and codependency. If you'd like to learn more, please visit my website at www.luminousrecoveryyoga.com. Hello, my friend. Thank you for listening to the Luminous Recovery Yoga Podcast. This is Kari, and I just wanted to take a minute to tell you how excited I am to present this interview to you with Melissa Leach. Melissa is someone that I met many years ago at a Baptiste Institute training. She is a phenomenal yoga teacher and functional anatomy enthusiast. In this episode, you'll hear all about what Melissa is up to and why our favorite phrase is "it depends." So I hope that you enjoy this episode. If you like it, please feel free to share it, give us a comment, and subscribe to my channel and over to Melissa's channel and support the work that we're doing in the world. It really helps to have people like you supporting the work and to keep spreading the word about good information. So with that being said, on to the episode. Hello, Melissa. This is so exciting. Sometimes I have nightmares that I'm in an interview and I forget to press record. I've actually had this nightmare where I'm like in the interview and I'm like, I didn't press record. So I press record. And
I see the little
am
button.
just the little button. I'm so happy to be here with Melissa Leach. This is truly, it's an honor to know you and to be friends with you, but also to consider you my precious, precious yoga teacher. So I want to introduce Melissa Leach. Melissa, say hello to everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm honored and very grateful to be here and to be with you.
Absolutely. I want to just give everyone a little intro of how I met Melissa. So I met Melissa in 2019. I was taking a assisting course through the Baptiste Institute in San Francisco. So I flew from Portland to San Francisco to take this course. And Melissa was the lead trainer of this Baptiste Institute assisting course. And it was phenomenal. I just remember being like, this woman is so freaking cool. And I really liked Melissa. And so I went home and immediately started following Melissa on Instagram and Facebook. And then, followed you along just as we do with the people that we admire through social media. And then recently, Melissa released a course called the Cueing course. And I was like, oh, that's so badass. I'm going to take that course. So I go to sign up for Melissa's course and I notice that Melissa still had stock photography on her website of some other woman. And I was like, what is going on? Who is this woman? And then I was like, oh, Melissa needs a little help with her website. So I privately messaged Melissa and I was like, hey, you probably don't know me, but I took a course from you years ago and I think you're really cool. And I would love to trade coaching to help you on your website. And Melissa wrote back, this is what you exactly said. You said, wow. And then you said, yeah, that'd be great. So that budded a wonderful friendship. Melissa and I actually meet every week to talk about yoga and to talk about running an online business. And really, I think that we coach each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It is such a, I actually vividly remember you from the assisting course because you left an absolutely. Like I remember just in the interaction of that weekend, because that was back in the day when it was a 2-day course. I remember talking to you and the questions that you asked were they were very insightful, and your presence and interaction both with me and the other people was very real. And there was something where I'm like, I actually really enjoy this person.
Wow, I didn't
because
know that.
Oh, absolutely. And so when you reached out, like it had been a while, I mean, 2019, like last year. No, I mean, I know it's been longer than that, but I was like, I totally remember this person.
Wow, I didn't know that. See, I have this assumption when I'm in a group of people, although in some ways I stick out like a sore thumb, that nobody notices me. Like there's that tendency to believe that like I am unnoticeable when really it is almost the opposite that becomes true.
Mm. No, you left a very positive and very real. I'm like I very much like authentic and real interactions, and it that was the impression that was left, like
Wow,
just
that is
a
so
being.
warming. I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
really didn't. So thank you for
Well,
saying
that's also why I was open to, the when you reached out, because people do, and so when you reached out, I was like, that left a
Oh.
mark, and that allowed for that
So it wasn't just like,
pathway
yeah,
to
my
be open.
website needs work. I'll just throw this one a bone.
Oh no, totally. It's because of who you are. I mean, like, listen,
Oh, that's so
I'm good at a
great.
lot of things. Marketing in my website is not one of.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you for saying that. That just means so much. I guess I never stopped to ask, like, Melissa, did you remember me? Because I remembered you. That's just so funny. And that just is so my own psychosis of how I'm like, I am very unmemorable. And people are like, actually, you're wearing yellow right now. You stick out. Like, there's just something that I do to myself where I minimize the impact that I have. So thank you for saying that. Um, you traveled with the Baptiste Institute for a while. That was like a big part of your life. What did you do for the Baptiste Institute?
I did a couple things for the Institute. I trained with Barron and the Institute for a lot of years. And I was fortunate to be the programs director of the Baptiste Foundation, which was the nonprofit arm. And through that nonprofit arm, we launched two programs that are very near and dear to me, because it's through yoga being able to reach groups of people that might not ever set foot in a yoga studio has always been something that's very important. And so we developed the Unstoppable program in conjunction with some amazing people. I partnered with Karen Terone, who's just an amazing
Hmm.
force of nature.
Hmm.
And with her, we co-facilitated and led the Unstoppable training, which was bringing the tools of yoga to people who work with children, primarily to school teachers, but open to coaches, just anyone
Hmm.
who works with kids in a very, not in like, hey, teach an after school 1 hour yoga class, but like, how actually do you take these parts and pieces and bring it into the classroom as a normal part of the day? And then the other part was being able to work with Sean Silvera and Dan Nevins with the Unbreakable program, which was geared towards veterans, active duty, and first responders in a very similar fashion. And
Hmm.
so I was able to do that. And then also on the Institute side, was very fortunate to be able to go lead programs, including the assisting course, the teacher's course, and then also the anatomy course. It was Art of True North Alignment at the time.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
was able to scoot around. And I also led, at the time, we had a 200-hour teacher training program called Expand Your Power. And so I was able to lead that at a lot of different studios around the country as well.
So
So
cool.
it was fun. It was a great time. Very grateful. I'm very grateful to Barron, to the Institute, to the foundation for that time, for
Absolutely.
sure.
I really appreciate the time I spent in the Baptiste Institute trainings. I mean, honestly, it really made me the yoga teacher that I wanted to be. So I really do value everything I got out of Baptiste yoga. And so, being a certified Baptiste teacher, to me, that means something.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep.
Hmm. Um, when did you start practicing yoga? Like, I want a little bit of a taste of your yoga journey. Like, were you the kind of person who was like, I always wanted to be a yoga teacher? Or were you
Oh,
someone who went in a little bit more kicking and screaming? I'm a kicker and screamer. I was like, I don't want it. And it just kept coming back. So I'm curious, what got you into yoga and was there resistance?
I guess I would, for in a lot of areas, describe myself as somewhat of a resistant person. I'm skeptical. How about that? I'm very skeptical with
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things. I have always enjoyed like exercising and working out and have been in the fitness industry for probably just as long as maybe a little longer than yoga. And so I was like, I mean, this is back in the day, it was like kickboxing and lifting and any kind of group exercise class that I could do to push myself, I was doing. And at the time I was out in California, actually. And I like to say that I started practicing when I was 2, because I've been practicing for over 25 years. So we'll just leave that at that.
You don't
Little
look a
longer
day
than
over 25, babe.
I greatly appreciate that. So I went to, started hearing about like this hot yoga thing. And so I just picked a place and I went and I remember wearing light gray leggings and showed up, and it was a full on, because I was like 90 minutes. I can do 90 minutes. It was a 90-minute class. And I left looking like I peed myself, and it was just awful. I was like, so that's the yoga thing, and I hate it, and I'm not going back.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back. I ended up going back, and I don't know why. I decided I was going to try it again. And I ended up going to another studio. I never went back to that studio, actually. The room smelled like there was just so much about it that it was not
And it's
enjoyable
hard
or
to
a good experience.
distinguish those things. Like, was it a bad class or do I hate yoga? And it's really, those could get very confusing.
Well, and here's the thing, and I guess as someone who's trained teachers, like what I would like to say to all of the teachers who might be listening is I don't remember the teacher at all. I don't remember if it was a man. I don't remember if it was a woman. I don't even remember if there was another person in the room. I'm assuming someone else was in the room because we did things. So I really do not remember the teacher. And so for all of us who feel so responsible with our classes,
Good point.
know that like that it was the class. It was not it had nothing to do with the teacher. I ended up going to a vinyasa class, power vinyasa class. Cooler. It was a warm studio. It was a heated studio, but it wasn't hot. And I liked it. It was fun. It was there. As it turns out, there was no music. It was just a vinyasa flow class, and I had a great time. And so I kept going back, and I made it because I just heard, and I didn't know the specifics. I just heard it was good for me, and it was a good complement to the other things that I was doing. So I wouldn't say that I like dove into it when I was hooked and I had spiritual awakening. I liked it. It was a great complement to what I was doing. And the way I got into it was a good workout. And then the way I got into teaching is I eventually moved to New York, and the place that I started practicing at, I liked the people. And I started to ask. I heard they might be doing a teacher training. That fell through, and they referred me out to a weekend certification for Yoga Fit. And I was like, that doesn't seem like enough education, but okay. And then I did a couple levels with Yoga Fit, and I think that's when I started to look for bigger trainings. And I ended up reading Barron's book, Journey into Power. And I was like, this has, well, it just had all of the, like I would find a 200-hour teacher training. And I was like, okay, the physical part of that resonates. I'm not fully, there's some other components that maybe I didn't feel comfortable with. And Barron's book was kind of the whole picture. And as it turned out at the time, he was leading a level 1 in Memla, New York. And I was like, okay, I usually don't travel for yoga teacher trainings, but this is in driving distance, so I'll go. And I did the level 1, and that was enough at the time to let me start teaching. I still didn't feel like that was enough. And that set me on.
Melissa, did you have a breakthrough at level 1?
I had a great time at level 1. And this is me, like, this is not like, I don't want anyone to think that this is coming off as like a judgment against yoga or the trains. I just didn't. That wasn't my experience. It was a great experience. Overall, it was a great experience, but I wouldn't say I walked out of there a totally different person. I think a lot of people.
I did. Level 1 blew my head open. I had no idea what I was getting into. Yeah, and it was funny because I'm a nut. I'm like a nutty student. Like if you tell me I'm going to have a breakthrough, I'm like, oh, okay. What day? Will I make sure that I'm
What
going to be
time?
there? I was terrified the whole week to go to the bathroom because I was like, what if I go to the bathroom and I miss my breakthrough? And so that just like added another.
That's amazing. What if I
What if
missed
I
the
miss the
breakthrough?
breakthrough and I'm on the toilet? Like, so it just created a lot of anxiety, but I had a few breakthroughs that week. So, I think level one is like, it's like what you want from it. I wanted a breakthrough.
But I wanted one and I went through. So it started me on the path of doing level one, level two, level three, fit to lead, assistant, like anything I could get my hands on with the Institute, I did willingly. But I would say and I would watch people get up at the microphone and be like, and I have had this
Crying.
breakthrough and I'm crying and it's changed my life. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? It was so like, I was like,
Uh,
where's mine? And I'm going through these trainings doing it wrong. I'm
went up,
not.
I had my level one and two with Paige, and I actually went up to Paige after like day three, and I was like, I said to her, I'm not crying the way that other people are here. Am I missing something? Am I not doing? And she was like, well, are you getting something from the work? I was like, yeah. She was like, then don't worry about it.
Everybody's process looks different.
And I was like, they must be getting some more money's worth because they're a mess. Maybe I'm not getting my money's worth because I am not a puddle. And so, yeah, but it's interesting how like yoga teacher, I mean, do they do that at other types of trainings of just other exercises in general where like people get real emotional and cry all the time? I don't know because I haven't been to other ones, but.
I've been to like Landmark. I've done Landmark and stuff like
Mm-hmm,
that, and it's similar because it's funny because I did Landmark after Baptiste,
mm-hmm.
and I
As
was
many
sitting there. I
do.
was right, and I was sitting there watching similar things, and I'm like, well, here I am again, years later, not doing Landmark right because I'm not having. But they all cumulatively, as I sit here today, like kind of looking back on all that, have all it's been a cumulative effect where
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be the teacher, I wouldn't be the person that I am today without all of those experiences. And it
Right,
didn't happen in one transformational moment up at the mic as much as that's what I wanted.
right.
Because that's what I thought it needed to look like.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
forcing it, as I'm like, oh, if I had knew now, or if I knew then what I know now, there would have been a little bit more freedom around it. And like I'm not doing level one or level two or level three
Right,
or fit to lead wrong.
right,
It's just the process.
right, right.
And that's my thing is like, and if any of my people who have coached me in the gym, they'll appreciate this, but like, I don't do anything fast. Like there's nothing like big and explosive about me. Like very slow and very steady. And it's funny as I'm the connection that I'm making is like, oh, it shows up everywhere.
Right. How you do anything is how you do everything. I really do believe
Totally.
that. I do see that plays out.
Totally.
So keep going. You went through all the levels. You found a calling through this particular method.
Yeah, I found a calling through this particular method and I started teaching. And then it became just something that I enjoyed doing. And I don't necessarily, I know a lot of yoga teachers that I train are I love their passion and they want to they want to improve people's lives, make an impact. And it was fun.
Hmm.
And I loved the practice and I loved teaching and it all just kind of worked together. And so I started only teaching a handful of classes as we probably all do. And the pendulum swung too far the other way where I think I was teaching like at one point, I think I was up to like, I don't know, 14, 17
Mm,
classes a week,
mm.
which has its
You almost
place.
get sick of
And
the sound of your own voice at that point.
oh, the classes where I would teach 5 or 6 classes a day, that sixth class, you're just like, I'm so sorry that you guys have to listen to me because I can't stand myself.
Totally, totally get that.
So, and then it just became a natural evolution to like, I remember the first teacher training I led, I was actually I was very nervous because I was like, who am I to lead this training? I really felt like I had to be teaching for like 25 years before I had enough like experience and knowledge to share with people who were getting into the profession. It was that was a probably my most challenging shift, was going from yoga teacher to someone who trains other yoga teachers, because I took that and I still take that very seriously.
That's actually a great segue into my next question, which is, tell me about your experience training yoga teachers, and what are like some of the top things that you think new yoga teachers need to know when they're getting started?
Oh, it's one of my favorite things is teaching and working with yoga teachers who have such a passion for whatever their reason is for getting into teaching, whatever their reason is for sharing the practice, is such a amazing opportunity, so that we have so many different entry points for people to gain access to this practice. Because at the end of the day, one of the things that I know to be true is there are a lot of people who won't go to a yoga studio, but there are a lot of people who are natural teachers who love the practice, who come in contact with those people outside of the yoga studio, who can still teach in a different arena in a very powerful way. And that's something that I have always been really passionate about. I working with yoga teachers is not easy, for sure. And there's a lot of things that I think it's important that we're aware of, both in working with yoga teachers and in the same way that all yoga teachers should know. I think it can be very challenging in that there are a lot of preconceived notions about what a yoga teacher should be and what goes into that. I think there's also a side of it where social media has created a certain narrative around yoga poses and how you share the practice.
Tell me about that narrative, because I agree with you.
It's pretty detrimental. Like, you see, we'll start with just the physicality of it. And it's like, if you want to get into this pose, all you need to do is this, this, and this. And it's like, well, no, because a lot of the poses, there's actually no connection to the functional anatomy. And a lot of people in the industry are like, functional anatomy is an overused term. I would agree in certain arenas, but not in the yoga arena, because we don't teach it functionally. There is not a lot of these poses where we're like, just practice and all is coming. Well, not that pose if you're a certain body type.
Right.
Not that pose if you have a certain bone structure. And there's nothing wrong with arms. That. My little T-Rex arms. Yeah, like I can't bind. I can chaturanga like a champ. I love, like, that's my favorite pose. But like a bind, yoga's not going to give me longer arms. And so that's going to show up. That shows up in just even like a simple twist, bringing, like in revolved crescent lunge, bringing my elbow outside of my knee. My arm bones aren't that long. And so reaching my elbow outside of my knee actually requires me to go into quite a bit of lateral flexion in the side, in my spine. And then you're adding rotation on that. When we talk about functional anatomy, and alignment, can I get my elbow outside of my knee? Yes. Is it actually the healthiest way to move my body? No. And that's where disconnect is. Some of the other narratives have to do with using this practice to like relax someone. And that's not what really the aim of yoga, maybe restorative yoga, but like really yoga as a spiritual practice is not really what it's all about. There is a lot I think that comes from maybe social media or society too, where there's a lot of spiritual bypassing, like love light and everything, just go to yoga every day and it's going to change your life or make everything better. So those are the types of things that I think we're working against. And like, I don't want to say working against, it's the challenge that we have in leading teacher trainings is actually to strip all of that away and take a look at this practice, the spiritual practice at the heart of it. And then you have poses that are the vehicles for people to gain access to these bigger bigger perceived benefits or practices.
Right.
Let's call them
Right.
practices. Um,
So when you talk about the spirituality of the practice, like what would be some particular aspects that you're pointing to that brings the spirituality?
I think it's part of it, is the connection to, let's say, Patanjali's 8-limb path, where we have, where you have like a set pathway to explore who you are and then who you are in connection with the world. It is, we do know that it's a practice to be able to calm the fluctuations of the mind, right? Not necessarily to relax. The spiritual practices that yoga offers really are tools to help us navigate the challenges of being a human being and the human experience. I think the human experience, and so when you look at the yamas and the niyamas, when you actually put those into practice, so ahimsa, right, nonviolence, a lot of us are like, well, obviously I don't go around punching people in the face, but it's like, well, what about the words that you use when you're thinking about yourself?
Yes.
What about
that?
It shows up in like your approach to even your practice? If we want to go super simple, are you using the practice as an escape? Are you trying to twist yourself up? I used to use this practice as a way to not beat myself up, but like beat out some frustrations. And
Definitely.
It wasn't as a way to deal and go into the heart of maybe what was bothering me. It was a way to like dissociate from it. Like the harder that, so it was like, I got really good. One of my favorite things is doing like double chaturangas. So I'm good at that now, but was that a practice of ahimsa?
Right.
Questionable. And we can look at the deeper aspects of each of, the yamas and the niyamas to have some difficult conversations, to really look at, like I would challenge that even in our conversations around alignment, yoga alignment, and teaching the physical part of it, are you rooted in these yamas and the niyamas that we kind of superficially refer to when we're teaching?
Right. It's interesting because I've also trained teachers and have done, teacher trainings. And one of the things that I also caution new teachers against is the idea that you have to bring all of that into a 60-minute class. Like the idea that your class has to be, anatomically accurate, spiritually deep. You should be quoting the Yoga Sutras. You should be throwing in some Sanskrit. You should be, and I feel like, why can't each of those things actually be separate? Like why can't the yoga practice with the poses be the poses, and meditation be meditation, and Sanskrit be Sanskrit, and the niyamas and the self-inquiry work? And, I sometimes feel like there's this urge that in a 60-minute yoga class, we have to shove it all in and put it all in order for it to be a good class or a meaningful class, or, and that's actually one of the things that I get frustrated with in a class is sometimes I feel like there's just like a jam pack of trying to add it all in. And then I feel like I'm having spirituality imposed upon me. So sometimes it's a balance of like, what are we doing in a 60-minute yoga class or a 30-minute yoga class or a 20-minute practice, And does it all have to be, like, in your opinion, does it all have to come through that one modality?
No, because if we share, like, yoga is so broad and so deep, you could very easily teach yoga without teaching poses. The problem is we try to teach yoga by only teaching the poses. And there's no heart, there's no connection to the spiritual practices other than like superficial random sayings that we've heard. Right. So I do think as a yoga teacher, you should have these different pillars that you're versed in, but you're not going to, like, that would be, and I've done this where I'm the worst is with anatomy, because I love it so much. And especially if I lead a teacher training weekend where it's the anatomy weekend, the next couple classes that I teach for general population are so anatomy focused. It's like a fire hose to the face. And it's like, while some people might find it interesting, there has to be a balance. And it's like, I think what you're saying is very valid in that we don't have to do all the things all at once, but
Right.
we want to be very masterful and very intentional in incorporating bits and pieces. It's like we're responsible for having all of this knowledge and going through the weeds and going through the confusion so that we can put out the most intentional, well-planned buffet that
Right.
our student chooses from.
Right.
Just, I think what's happening, and you said it was okay to be a little,
We're edgy here.
we're a little edgy. There's a lot of really crappy buffets that are being put out.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, I think our job is just to offer up the most well thought out, well informed buffet,
Mm-hmm.
and then leave it up to our students that they're going to put together the most perfect plate from that
Right.
buffet.
Right. I think there is also this tendency with newer yoga teachers that if you don't have the most incredible, miraculous, deep, spiritual, impeccable thing to say, that maybe you shouldn't teach. And I know that for myself, when I started teaching classes, I tried to just stay quiet until I actually felt like I had something genuine to say because I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
just start imparting wisdom or spirituality when it wasn't natural, you know? So I also think that some of those things come with time and experience where you feel like you have something to add in that arena.
You just hit something very important on the head. I think that I don't even know if it's for new, maybe all teachers, like learning to teach yoga, this process isn't easy. It
Right.
is challenging and it is okay for it to be challenging. And it's okay for there to be a lot of information that maybe you don't necessarily want to learn. But at the end of the day, we've chosen this as our profession. And I use that word very intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
For some, I guess it is a hobby, but like, think about why people are coming to yoga. Like, if they're coming to relieve stress or they're coming to deal with certain things, if they're coming for health reasons, that begs the question, shouldn't we be versed in those areas? If we're going to be like, yes, yoga is going to relax you, or yoga, which it could be a result. Like, yoga is going to help you with your stress, or yoga is going to give you this benefit. What are you basing off of that? Can you cite different sources to back that up? Or are you just repeating something you read online in like a blog, which is not a quality source of information?
Right.
Or, I think we look, and I remember I spoke once at the microphone at level 1, and it was actually legitimately to ask Baron where like the best ever yoga teacher toolbox was coming. Like, where is the, like, what is it? The easy button? Like, that was where's the toolkit?
Where's
And
that packet that I was supposed to get on the way
where's
in?
where's the manual that makes me, just like you didn't want to miss your transformation, but you didn't want to go to the bathroom so you wouldn't miss it. I was looking for the steps. And if I follow the steps, because I am kind of a linear thinker at times,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
if I follow the steps, then I will be an amazing yoga teacher. It's not that. I mean, it's taken me years and years and years and years to get to have a certain handle on
Right.
anatomy, to get to have a certain
I
handle
think it's
on.
exposing yourself to people as well. Like, I didn't, I mean, sometimes it just takes seeing bodies in front of you to know how to talk to them, you know?
Right,
And I
right.
know that you've mentioned this before in our, what the work that we do together, which is that like if you Google Warrior 2, you're going to see a bunch of images of the same type of person.
Mm-hmm. It's the same. Yeah, it is. I'm pausing because there's a lot around that, and it's one area where I think it's very important for those of us who are yoga teachers, for those of us who have chosen this as a profession, to recognize the harm that we have done and the harm that continues to be done, where this, in fact, the way that it's taught is often not an inclusive
Mm,
practice.
right.
We sit there and we're like, here's the shape, right? Here's the posture. And if you can't get into that, then you're less than and you need modifications.
Ooh, let's talk
And
about that. That's one of my favorite things that you talk about, which is
well,
Let's pitch the word modification.
Well, because it indicates that this posture is the ideal. The thing is that posture has been centralized around, I guess we just name it, is white, very slender, thin, hypermobile people. We're centralizing that as a should be. What it's not is representative of general population. What it doesn't take into account are people's trauma, mental health, stress, chronic pain,
Limb length.
limb length, their hydration status when they walk in the room. Have they recovered? Are they sleeping it? And like we're like, the best thing is, I want to be very careful on how I say this, is I think with yoga we can't get away with it in like the fitness industry. We do that, and that's a whole different podcast. In yoga, we hide it behind this curtain of spirituality. It's a spiritual practice. And these poses are like ancient. Well, no, they're not.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. Therefore, if they are not ancient, right? And they're not, because I believe that the heart of yoga, right? The spiritual aspect of yoga as a practice is accessible for everyone. It's the poses that aren't.
Yeah.
And I think we have done as yoga teachers, when there's a whole bunch of people, what we want to recognize, there's a whole lot of people who won't step foot into a yoga studio. And it's not like, there's lots of different reasons, but for the people who are like, I'm not flexible enough to do yoga. And we're like, yes, you are. No, they're not the way some of us are teaching it.
Right.
And like to own that. And maybe if you believe that they are flexible enough to do yoga, then change the way you teach so that it makes sense with how the body's meant to move.
I love that. I love that. So what would you say is a word or an alternative to the word modification? What would be a more inclusive, accessible way, like variation?
Variation, I think, is a great word. A lot of people use adaptation, options.
Or just the pose.
Just the pose. It's just a different, because
we just call it the pose.
Different. Yeah, it's just different. It does, because we hold out that a certain aesthetic quality of the pose. Like, let's take revolved crescent lunge. Your elbow outside of the knee. That's like the goal of the pose. But if it's rooted in limb length, then we've made the person wrong. It's not the person that's necessarily needing to be fixed. It's the pose.
You know, this is silly, but I've shared with you that I have a frozen shoulder right now. And it is excruciating to me to be in Warrior 2 and to hold my arm out. It just makes me want to cry. So you know what I do is I drop my arm down and I just do it with one arm. And there is this part of me that has to, like, almost every time talk myself out of, like, no, you don't look silly. Your arm is frozen. And you're still here, and that's okay. And so, like, even adapting the pose for what's happening in my body right now, which is that I have a frozen shoulder, and stretching my arms front and back and looking, like, that hurts.
Well, why do you even have to turn your head?
You know, and that's another thing I've stopped doing, is I've stopped turning my head because it creates more stress on my neck than down my shoulder. So now I look straight ahead and I drop one arm and I'm you know, and yes, I'm going to call that Warrior 2.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know?
But like, not to be but when we talk about it as an accessible practice, what if someone doesn't have two arms?
Right.
They need modifications because they're less than.
Right.
No, like Warrior 2 is like, if we teach Warrior 2, and I'm not saying that we need physical cues, right? But they should be rooted in anatomy. Have your arms out parallel to the ground if you want, or if that doesn't make you happy for that day, do something with your arms that does.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of different ways to teach it. How do you invite someone into that pose in a way that allows for an exploration of the physical posture? Not that they have to jam themselves into a shape. Right. Rather than like what.
So if we were looking at, let's say, Warrior 2 from a functional anatomy perspective, what would we talk about in that pose that had nothing to do with whether your arms were parallel or what direction your gaze was in? Like, what would be the essence of that pose to capture, aside from all of the, like, bullshit? If we stripped it down.
If you strip it down, it's like, what are you actually, if you give people like action cues, right? Like what happens if you push your feet down into the ground? What happens? I'm not telling you what to feel. I'm actually opening a door that you can explore. Yeah, what am I feeling? What does happen in my body when I push my feet into the ground? You could give a cue like pull your thigh bones in towards the center line of your body. You know, hug everything in towards the center line and notice what that creates in your body. So what you're doing there is cultivating a little bit of interoception as you're inviting them into an inner experience through that physical cue.
Do you teach this stuff in the cueing course?
I do. Cueing course. Yep.
I'm going to make a plug for Melissa's cueing course because I took the first iteration and I know that you're releasing it again with even more stuff. And I have to say that this is one of the things that I love about you as a teacher, and I love having you as my teacher, is that Melissa's focus is on the action of the pose, rather than just like where your limbs go in space. Because as you've said, what if you don't have those limbs? So your focus in teaching yoga is more on the action of the pose.
And that's actually a way to create inclusivity, right? Everybody to some extent, and I'm not dictating to what extent, but everybody could create an action of pressing down into the floor with something. Everybody could create an action of drawing in towards the center line of their body, you know, depending on what. And so that's like, if you give an action, you're also allowing for someone who wants to like give their 100%, they can give that 100%. If you want to accommodate a beginner, or if you have someone who actually needs to scale back their practice, then they don't have to hug into 100%. They can hug in like 5% or no percent. So it's cueing action, action over alignment. It's not to say that there isn't value, especially for new teachers, to have that shape, to have alignment, because we need the reality of teaching yoga is we need common language, right? But that's not, it's letting go that there's some sort of hierarchy of these poses, like this better than this, which is where we get into modifications as a word that like, I understand it because I think it's very well intentioned. We're trying to accommodate everybody. But if you actually let go of alignment and shift how you teach, it opens up a lot more possibility where we actually don't have to modify. I don't have to fix things. It just actually accommodates everyone naturally.
I love that. Oh, I love that so much. It makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I love you for saying, and I want you to talk about this for a second, Melissa, I'll say to Melissa, like this or that, or what about this or that? And then Melissa will say, well, it depends.
No one likes that.
I love how you say it depends. So tell us a little bit about what it means to say it depends, and like why that is so important in the context of teaching and practicing yoga. It depends.
In teaching and practicing yoga, it depends. Our brains really like the black and white. We like the right or wrong answer. And this is why reinforcing, like when we start to learn anatomy plus body movement, it's not always black and white. And I think for people, we want the easy answer to best accommodate all of our students. And there's not always the easy answer. Sometimes there is. And the reason is it depends is so someone getting into a pose like wheel could be limited by almost an infinite number of variables. When you strip back, or like this would be something that I would get into in anatomy, is when you look at all of the different ways we can be measured as a human being. Blood pressure, limb length, heartbeat, like there are so many different variables. We take a look at like what's happening in your ankles, what's happening at the knee, what's happening at the hip joint, what's happening at the SI joint, what's happening through the spine, the shoulders, the wrists. All of those are variables that impact someone's Then you layer on, and this gets a little bit more complex, is like the how stress shows up in the physical body, how that might contribute to a restriction. What we don't know is like, is it a structural restriction? Is it something muscular that we could work around or work with? The structural is going to be a hard stop. But it's not necessary. We can still, that's why an action cue better than alignment, right? How stress could impact how someone even hears and interprets your cues, it depends. And it also shows up when we talk about like trauma and mental health. We have a lot of really important information, like breathing practices are super, like they're calming, and these different breathing practices, meditation practices are proven to help with stress and anxiety. It also, so yes, and also it depends. There is a lot of really solid research out of there, but when you start to pull apart some of these research studies, or like yoga, right? Yoga is beneficial in alleviating stress. One, it depends on the individual's nervous system.
Right.
The other it depends is, well, what part of the yoga practice did they pull apart and study? Was it the poses? Was it the breath work? Was it the meditation? And then deeper, what style of breath work? What style of meditation? So that's why it depends. There are so many variables. And so when we're teaching with this an anatomy informed lens, that's our most powerful tool as a teacher, is knowing that it depends, and we're not always going to have the right answer, because the human body, with all of its different systems, is so awe-inspiring.
Right.
And to think that we've got it answered like that it's kind of silly, but yeah, it depends gives us a lot of freedom. And I think having that phrase, it depends.
It really does. It takes me off the hook. It really does. And I just, that's what I've really appreciated about you giving me that phrase as a teacher. It depends, is just that, like, it really just does.
Oh, well, totally. Because it depends. Like, if someone asks, like, am I doing this right? It depends.
Right.
Is it right for you? I might not do it that way. And that has nothing, and the way I do it shouldn't matter at all.
Right.
And it depends. Like, does it hurt? No. Then does it look, a certain way? Unlike anything we've ever seen in a yoga class, if it feels good and you're happy and you are gaining a benefit out of this class, then that is the perfect thing for you to be doing right now.
Right. Like, it's just very contextual. And when we look at things in a context, then it does depend. One other thing I want to talk about, I want to pivot to one of the things that I love talking to you about, which is pain. And you have taught me, and one of the things that you teach, and the context that you and I get together in, you are doing how would you describe it, like a trauma-informed training with me?
Trauma and mental health, where it's like trauma,
health.
complex stress,
and so
stress
one of
response.
the things that we talk about is pain. And recently, what I heard you say on your podcast, which we're going to talk about that in a second, but you talked about how sometimes pain, or was it trauma, shows up as pain? How do you say that? Or, like, how would you talk about that a little bit?
Stress and trauma can show up as pain in the body. We obviously have pain that is caused by whether it's overuse, whether it's an acute injury. There's this physical pain that shows up in the body. And that's complicated. Like, you're dealing with, as you mentioned, frozen shoulder. I deal with, and one of the things that what I would want to point to is that we all are dealing with pain. When you are a human being using your body, which means if you're going to yoga multiple times a week, you're probably going to end up with pain, joint pain, muscular pain. And it's not like, oh my gosh, you must have been doing it wrong. It's actually kind of a part of being a human being. And we want to stop catastrophizing pain for people. And like, it's not necessarily they need to be fixed or they need to back off and take it easy. It's actually learning, using this practice to help people, to teach people how to distinguish different types of pain.
And sensation.
Pain is it pain, or is it something that you can work around, work with? If it's something in a joint, we might want to that's something we want to work with. If it's something that's radiating, that indicates something that might be a little bit more nervous system related. Do we want to work with that? If it's showing, there's just so many, it's a very complicated conversation. Adding on, you also have different pain that comes from different sources. And so trauma and stress, yes, we know that trauma, if it's like a car accident or something physical, can cause pain. There's an injury. The one thing to keep in mind is like, we can't overload one system of the body and not have it show up in other systems of the body. The body is way too complex, way too smart for all of that. So if our nervous system gets overloaded, let's say with stress, anxiety, trauma, anything like that, it is very possible for it to show up in another area of the body, whether it's in a joint, whether it's in a muscle. So sometimes pain isn't necessarily caused by that specific movement. These pain signals, and that's actually, I'm getting ready to do an injury course, and there's going to be a whole aspect of pain, because a lot of people are working with chronic pain and they don't need to be fixed. They don't need a modification. And like, just as a yoga teacher, not as a yoga teacher, as a human being, like those of us who have had chronic pain, the last thing that we're already frustrated by that pain. And then to walk into a yoga class and be made to feel that we're less than and we need special, it's like, no, we want, like, first of all, they're pretty tough, just being in that room, tough and resilient, just being in the room, dealing with what they're dealing with. We need to stop making them feel like, or putting over there that they need this modification, that it's actually, we need to adjust how we're teaching. But anyway, so pain is a very fascinating, and I think respecting that it actually can come from different sources, whether it is an acute or physical injury, that's something that we can deal with. But sometimes, and that's why I think, especially when yoga teachers are talking about how this practice is so beneficial for stress and for trauma, it's like, well, then you also have to understand the different types of pain that you're working with, because that is tied in, so whether it's stress from work, whether it's stress from relationships, all of these things factor in and can show up as, it can present as pain in the body.
Right. Wow, that's so fascinating. So, is this something that people could learn more about in your injury course?
Yep.
And when is that happening? Tell us a little bit about that.
That is going to happen within the next couple of weeks. What I'm really, just being very transparent, I'm trying to decide if I want to make it a live course or if I want to do it as a standalone course that people can work through. And something that you and I actually have played with is turning it into like a pre-recorded course that has a group coaching component.
I love that. I love that. So so we're still waiting to see what it's going to look like, but that is something that people can expect to see coming from you soon.
Yeah. And it's going to be, obviously some easy common injuries that we see and how to work with them, but then it's a little bit more complexities when we start a little bit more complex topics such as chronic pain. Because I've got a lot of people who will come to me one-on-one. I've got someone actually who has scoliosis that's actually looking how she can stay in her practice. And one of the things with someone with scoliosis is we want to be super careful about actually pushing flexibility for this person and actually shifting the practice to be more stabilizing.
Right.
But there's the course. I'm very excited about the course. The thing is, if I don't launch it soon, it's going to be a very, very long course because there's so much information. So I'm like, I actually just need to launch it. So it'll be within the next couple weeks.
And then we've got the cueing course. That's another thing that is coming.
I need to record it. It's language. You and I have had lots of conversations around language, and the intentionality and the intention with which we cue individual poses, and the intention in how we show up as teachers is so important, because if we lack intention, when we cue an individual pose, then we're probably going to lack intention when we put together an individual sequence, which I'm sure we've all been in those classes where I've been in classes where I've literally sat down like midway because I'm like, I am so confused with what's happening right now. And as someone who has practiced for a lot of years, to feel that lost, you can only imagine how someone who has a newer practice feels. And that's something that, like, just for me as my personal like operating system is I never want a student in my class to feel like that. I don't want them to feel lost. I don't want to feel that. I don't want them to ever feel like less
overwhelmed.
than. Overwhelmed. So, wow, I pivoted. I need to bring that back to what the question was.
The cueing course, which I know you enough to know that it's like, you know, if you follow Melissa on Instagram or Facebook, which I would recommend, you're always talking about cueing in terms of like being able to say why you said that thing.
Oh, that would be another. So bringing this back to one of your initial questions for teachers is to be able to answer why you're giving a cue.
Yeah.
If you don't know why, then you should question it and learn why you're giving that cue.
Right. And these are things that you talk about in the cueing course, because I've taken your first cueing course.
We should be like toddlers. Like, why did I say that? And like what my practice in being intentional with language is, like, I will call myself out in class. Like if I say something that like maybe I've heard it before and I'm like, I'm just going to try this out. And I can tell the minute it comes out of my mouth where I was like, that felt gross coming out of my mouth and it made no sense. Like I'll actually call myself, like, what was I even saying? I think it's important that we have a why behind our cues and be able to answer the why, like behind our sequence.
Yeah. Right.
You know, like if you're sequencing, why are those poses put together in that specific way?
I want to finish up lastly with the podcast that you just launched, which is very exciting. And you've already made, by the time this interview comes out, there will probably be at least 2 or 3 episodes available. And what is it called again?
It is the Primal Performance Podcast.
Primal Performance Podcast. And I have personally listened to the first episode and loved it and cannot wait for more. So I really want to encourage our listeners, people who are listening into this interview, to check out Melissa's podcast, which is just full of this kind of conversation about, you know, physical fitness and yoga and why and all of this like really juicy functional anatomy stuff that I just really, really enjoy from you.
Well, thank you. It's a very fun podcast, and I partnered with he's actually he's my coach, and there's a lot of stuff that shows up in the yoga industry, and I would often put yoga under, you know, the fitness umbrella too. But there's a lot that shows up in the fitness industry and the nutrition industry, and all of these things work together, right, to achieve overall health. And the conversations that I get very excited about, especially with my co-host, is to challenge where even the fitness and the nutrition industries can do better. Because there are certain narratives that we were talking about in yoga that exist in some of these other arenas. And when
Melissa
we're talking,
is getting a master's degree in nutrition right now, so I would consider you a very solid source.
Thank you.
I know your level of research, and I know just like the conversations that you and I get into. Sometimes I'm like, wow, I didn't know what I was even asking. And now Melissa gave me a dissertation on something that I didn't even really know what I was asking.
Really looking for a one-word answer. Thanks.
Can we just make this a soundbite? I didn't really want all of that information, but you know, I could always generally like compound it down into, well, Kari, it depends. And so,
you know what I love about that though, is that's our job as teacher, is to like go through all of that so that you distill it down to like the quick, simple, one-off, easy cue for our students to understand.
Right.
But our job is to go through all of that to get to that one thing.
I think that's a really good place to like that feels like this conversation has gone full circle. I have just really enjoyed this conversation, and I want to encourage people to find Melissa. Movement with Melissa is how people can find you on Instagram. Melissa
Yes.
Leach is how they can find you on Facebook. Primal, oh, tell me the name of the podcast one more time.
Primal Performance
Primal
Podcast.
Performance Podcast is how you can find Melissa on podcast. And then Melissa is always talking about her courses on Instagram. So that's a really good way to kind of stay up to date on what people are looking for from you. Also, I want to make a plug for your awesome free audio class. People could actually go onto Melissa's link tree, and there is a link on there to take a free audio class from Melissa, which I had the pleasure of helping you create. So I got to take that class, and I love that class.
Well, it wouldn't be up there without you. So there's a huge
So I was
amount of
like, Melissa, we
gratitude to
got
you.
to get you something. We got to get you some email addresses. So anyway, that would be a great way to get put onto Melissa's newsletter list and take that free audio class. It's just a really great way to experience Melissa as a yoga teacher. And yeah, I just really love what you're doing. And I'm just so grateful that you're my teacher. So thank
Oh,
you
well,
so
I'm
much
grateful.
for answering my Facebook message several months ago.
Well, thanks for being you, because who you
I told
are.
someone that I was like, there's this like really cool teacher that I really wanted to like get to know better. And someone was like, you said that? You did that? And I was like, yeah, I just can't help myself.
I'm so
sometimes,
glad you did. It's
sometimes
such
I
a
just
great.
can't stop myself from my impulses and my urges.
It's the best one ever.
So I'm just so grateful that you took the time to have this conversation with me, Melissa.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. And I just want to reiterate, please find Melissa. She's incredible, an amazing yoga teacher and a teacher of teachers. So if you're listening to this and you're a yoga teacher, Melissa is also a teacher of teachers, like world class.
Oh, thank you. It's very
So thank
sweet.
you so much for taking the time for this interview. I just adore you, and I'm so grateful for getting to just hear you say it all out loud in one
Mm.
place. I'm
Well,
going to
thank you for
rewatch this
having me.
interview and take notes for myself. So
Well, the feeling is very, very mutual. I have a tremendous amount of respect for what you're doing. Um,
thank
so
you.
the feeling is mutual.
Thank you. Well, thank you to all of our listeners, and I will look forward to seeing you out there. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Luminous Recovery Yoga Podcast. If you'd like to support the show, please consider joining my Patreon or leaving a comment and review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or YouTube.